What's going on, guys? If you are looking to do that last minute climb, I've analyzed a lot of different games from all of the top players from a lot of regions, and I looked at the results of the most recent tournament play to tell you guys what the best comps are to climb at the very end of this set. So set 5 ends on July 20th, and then we will see you all for set 5.5 the day after. So going on to the S tiers, we do have some surprises here, but not in the S tier. In the S tier, we have Dawnbringer Karma and Forgotten Draven. These two are by far the most played compositions by all of the good players. And then after that, one surprise is Skirmishers. Skirmishers have risen to the top. People do like a 3-star Lee Sin with the Jax 2 as one of the more popular variants. And then after that, Redeem Vel'Koz. Vel'Koz kind of fell down a little bit. He was part of like the S tier trifecta before, but he is considerably less played and a little weaker than the Karmas and the Dravens. Next, we have Nightbringer Yasuo. This is like the typical reroll comp. Still very powerful. It's just like a little inconsistent compared to all the other comps we discussed, but still in the A tier. In the B tier, we have a ton of comps. So what does it mean to be in the B tier? B tier means you either can't be played that often, but are very good, or you are just not very good, but can be played at like a moderate level. So here we have Abominations. These fall into the very strong, but seldomly played because you need perfect starts for it. Assassins, same story. Mordekaiser / Draven comp. You might as well just be playing Forgotten Draven. Kayle Knights, hard to hit. Nightbringer Aphelios, kind of weak. And Varus, kind of weak as well. Varus is a type of comp you play where you don't hit anything better, but it's still decent overall. C tier, we drop down Renewer, Hellion, Draconic, Ashe, and Legionnaire down here. These 4 comps are pretty playable if you get very, very, very good starts for it, but I don't think they're quite as on the same level as the rest of the comps in the B tier. And then for the do not plays, this is the Draconic Setts and the Vayne Reroll. Spellweaver, Cavalier, this one's okay. Maybe I'm treating this one a little too harshly, but you really only play it if you get very, very perfect starts for it. So on to how to play every single compositions. Again, this is the last one for set 5, and we will have a rank reset. So if you want like a fancy border at the end of the season, this is where you need to like start taking some notes. So Karma hasn't really changed too much for the past couple of patches. You build either a blue buff or Spirit Shojin on her. I like blue buff a little more, but you essentially need 1 mana item and 2 damage items. Jeweled Gauntlet and Hat are good. You could use the shadow versions as well. It's all fine and dandy there. We have a full guide there, and I have a Karma to Masters gameplay video where I play 3 hours of Karma. I think I did like 6 games of that. So definitely check that out if you want to really master the Karma comp. Onto the Forgotten Draven comp. This one is with Mordekaiser and Draven and Ryze carry. Despite being nerfed, Ryze is still good. What I like about this composition is that you could use any items for Draven. So we have here the IE Last Whisper Bloodthirster combo, but you could run stuff like Runons, Shadow Zeeks, the Shadow version of Infinity Edge, Shadow Hand of Justice, regular Last Whisper. You could use all sorts of different stuff on Draven, which is why he is pretty good in this set. On to the next comp, we have the Skirmisher reroll. So this one is a little different from before. So Lee Sin 3 is good in both versions, but for your carry, you either use Nidalee 3 or Jax 2. Both are fine. Whichever one you hit is going to work well. And then later on, you replace one of them with Viego in the late game for your 6th Skirmisher. But the items remain the same. You want AP and tankiness on Lee Sin. Pantheon's good with the Redemption, Jax is good with RFC and Shadow Runons, and like a Bloodthirster works well on Jax too. This comp spiked up a ton in popularity, so this is something where you aren't playing at the very top level. Maybe some people haven't caught on to the meta yet, and you could actually pull out a lot of easy placements with this comp because not too many people are going for it, and it is very strong. Next up, we have the Vel'Koz comp. This is with Lux or Vel'Koz carry, or both sometimes. This one fell down quite a bit, but it is still pretty good. It's still in the A tier. You want Rel as your primary tank until you get Garen. Vel'Koz in the backs with Lux right next to him because Lux can shield your entire team. And this comp is still really strong. You are still doing like the 6 synergy trait, which is pretty good in this set. Nightbringer Yasuo, this one fell down a little bit because it's a little less consistent than everything else. You do the same old Yasuo build, which is Runons RFC with the Jeweled Gauntlet. This is like the most common build I see, at least. There are a lot of different variations you could do, of course. For example, if you want some healing, you could maybe replace the Runons with like a Shadow Hand of Justice. Onto the next build, we have the B tiers. We have Abomination Zyra. This one is like very hit or miss. If you get Draconics early to get Zyra 3, that is fantastic, and then you replace the Draconics later on with just random units. Generally, they are going to be tank units, but you are running the Abominations as well. Really strong comp, but you need to get a little lucky to do it. You could get like a lot of first place with this comp, but again, like you need really good starts for it. On to the next build, Assassins. Assassins aren't really played too much anymore. It's mainly like Nocturne carry or Katarina carry, mainly more leaning towards Nocturne. If you're running Nocturne, you want the Revenant package. If you're running Katarina, you want the Forgottens. So if you are playing Katarina, add in Arise. If you are playing Nocturne, add in the Volibear Ivern, because I kind of separated them because we have so many units on the board right now. You typically wouldn't run this board on the screen, but just make a note of that, and that is the benefit of watching the video versus just looking at a picture. You get to know that if you are running Katarina, that's the only time you run Rise, and if you are running Nocturne, do not run the Rise. Onto the next build, we have Mordekaiser and Draven carry. This one's very similar to the other Draven build we looked at before, but instead of running 6 Forgotten, you just run just good units, and those good units are Taric, Darius, and Diana or Lulu. All of them are pretty much interchangeable. They're all really good, and they're often used as like the 8th man in a Forgotten comp. So in Forgotten, you run like 6 Forgotten plus a Mordekaiser plus a random unit. Those units are typically going to be Darius, Taric, Lulu, or Diana. So you just kind of play all of them in this Draven Mordekaiser carry comp. Next build, we have Kayle Knights. If you end up hitting a Kayle and you have a Rageblade and a GA, go ahead and go for this build. Knights are still really good. You could go for 6 Knights if you want. 4 Knights is generally what I find to be the best balance because some of the other Knights are a little too weak and you'd rather run stronger units instead, such as Kindred and Rel. And we also add in the Lux to get Mystic and Redeemed for Kayle. This is another hit or miss comp, which is why it is lower on the tier list compared to everything else that we've seen already. Next up, we have Nightbringer Aphelios. This comp is just really weak. Like, Aphelios just never really found his time to shine in this set. He was like okay for a couple of patches, but he was never really that great, except in the very beginning where he was completely broken, but then they nerfed him too hard and he just never came back ever since then. Next build, we have the Varus build. Varus is what you play when you are transitioning. So in stage 3 and stage 4, Varus is amazing. He's probably one of the best carries during that time, but you do eventually need to either 3-star him or transition into something else. So you're kind of in a dilemma. If you go for 3-star Varus and you don't hit, you are going to be doing horribly that game. However, if you roll down and you don't hit any good carries, you are also going to lose because you still have a Varus too. So you kind of need to decide between each option, and ideally you go for a 4-cost carry and then you just transition into either an Aphelios, a Vel'Koz, or a Draven build, depending on what items you have, because that's why Varus is so great. He could hold all those carries items and do it pretty effectively because he makes use of both attack speed, attack damage, and ability power. Next builds, we have the C tier Coven Renewer. This one's still good if you're doing reroll. I'm going to go through these a little more quickly because they are less important than everything else we went over. Hellion, man, I'm really conflicted. I don't really think Hellion's that great anymore. Draconic Ashe, if you get early Draconics and get a ton of Ashes with Ashe items, go for it. Legionnaire, if you get a ton of Rivens, I still see people pulling this comp off. It's just really rare because people only do it if you just happen to get a very early Riven 2 and then you continue to get Rivens after that. It's just something that doesn't really happen that often. Next up, we have Sett, don't do this. Spellweaver Cav, I've seen some success with this. It's just really weird to do. I personally wouldn't try it because you're doing a reroll comp and there are just much better rerolls available instead of doing that. Reroll Vayne, don't do that either, and that is pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed everything I brought to you for Set 5. If you guys are interested in more, I will be posting out a lot of the new content for Set 5.5, like a tier list, gameplay guides, all that good stuff. We also have the items down here, but if you are interested in that, go ahead and subscribe if you have not already. And if you are returning to the channel, I would appreciate a like, and let me know what rank you guys ended up or are aiming for down in the comments below. But yeah, we are going to be getting rid of all the shadow items, so this chart will be a lot simpler to look at. So hopefully for all the new players out there, the game will be much simpler than it was in Set 5. I think that's one of the downsides of this set. This set has kind of been a little weird for me. I think it was overhyped. I think this was supposed to be like the best set of TFT, but it just kind of felt lackluster. I'm not really too sure why or how. It was missing some sort of X factor, which every other set had, but I just don't really know what they could have done to try to fix that. I feel like God Kings were an issue. They weren't like that strong, but I also feel like you kind of never transitioned ever in this set. You kind of just picked a comp at stage 2 and just continued on from there and never pivoted at all. And I think it's because the items were too strong on certain champions, which means that if you build one item, you can't just transition to someone else and expect good results because you are going to be facing perfectly itemized enemies, and it kind of felt bad. I feel like other sets weren't quite like that. I think like after set 3, perfect items were much more important than just like decent ones. that were slammable early. That's just my opinion. I guess let me know down below what your favorite set was as well. But hopefully you guys have a good last minute climb, and I will see you guys all in set 5.5.